Hi, everyone. This is Nick Orlando with the Nick Alonzo Group, and I'm here with my great friend Ken at Ridgeline Inspection. And Ken is going to be talking today about home inspections for our audience out there. Ken, thank you for coming, brother. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me out here today.
Man, I know home inspections, when I talk to a lot of my buyers, that's one of the biggest thing on their minds. They want to know what's going on with their home. They want to see, am I buying a lemon, as they say, buying a car? Am I buying something that I can live in for the next 30 years or for the rest of my life? So I appreciate your time being here. First question, right off the bat, tell the audience how you kind of got into home inspection and kind of background and story on that.
Yeah, so I started out in high school. I was really into construction and building material, and I actually went to school for architecture, but then decided that I didn't want to be stuck at a computer all day long, trying to draw, and then you have to intern for so long. And so I bounced around doing different jobs here and there, and then when I bought my first home, there was a home inspector that came, and I was like, this is all stuff I know how to do. This is crazy. I can't believe I paid someone to do this. But then I realized that once I dove into it, it's more in depth than I thought it was. So then I went to school for that and learned how to become a home inspector, and I just wanted to be there for people when they're buying their first house. Because when I bought mine, I wanted to make sure it was good, so I treat every house as if it was me buying the house, and I wanna make sure that they're getting a good house.
And that's crazy to me that you're an architect and you're in construction. And when I talk to some home, that's why I love working with you, and I always
Yeah.
call you on your business. I've talked to other home inspectors before, and I ask them what their background is, and a lot of them don't have construction background.
Yeah.
They definitely don't have an architectural background like yourself. Do you feel that your background is what makes your company that better than everyone else?
Well, I think the background and then just me caring about how, everybody's getting into their house. I mean, it's a scary situation. That's a lot of money you're putting down at one time, and, if I can be there to help you kinda give it a little peace of mind, it's really important.
No, that is important. And then and real quick, so as we clarify, right? And I think when I talk to first time home buyers, especially because this is what this whole podcast episode specifically is first time home buyers, is when I talk about home inspection, they have no idea what that covers. So what does home inspection really cover when you're in the house?
Yeah, so I mean, it's basically, that's where I got the name of my business. I call it Ridgeline because I'm covering everything under the ridge, you know?
Right.
So, for me, I'm looking at your roof, I'm looking at all your appliances, I'm looking at plumbing, electrical, structural concerns, anything that can cause water damage by, not having it protected properly. Very much whole structure itself, I'm taking a look at.
No, that's good. And when you're doing that, what's the typical time frame? Is it 20 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? I mean, obviously there's variances from
Yeah.
home to home, but on average, how long does it take you to go through a house?
Yeah, so it just depends on the size of the house, but normally it's about hour and a half, 2 hours roughly to do the inspection. I mean, there's some houses that I was at one yesterday, it took me over 3 hours to do, and it wasn't a very big house, but it was a 121-year-old house. So, there's some stuff that goes more in depth than that, so it's hard to predict how long, but I tell people average about 2 hours.
And I know you said depending on square footage, right? You just brought up how old the home is.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a plethora of nuances that you're seeing throughout the home inspection. But throughout those nuances, what are some common issues that you as a home inspector like? Yeah, this is I'm sure 50% of the time I'm gonna find this, or what do you see? That's a common pathway when you're doing your inspections.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, a lot of roof issues, people not cleaning out their gutters, so then, it causes damage to the eaves and the rafters. On the stucco houses, you have stucco cracking, and wood houses, you have not being painted, so it rots out. Those are big ones. A lot of times, especially on raised foundations, they don't even realize that something's leaking under the house because no one ever goes under their house.
Right,
It's
right,
one of those
right,
things
right,
they're like,
right.
yeah, I don't want to do that.
Right.
They'd rather, just be up there where the inside of the house is nice,
Yeah.
and
Do
but
you
and then
ask them like, "Hey, when's the last time you crawled
I
underneath your house?"
do,
Okay.
I do ask sometimes, and then sometimes I go in it, and there's so many spider webs, you could tell that no one's been under there for a long time. So it's
Man,
just like,
and do your buyers have like this, when you talk to them, do they have this feeling of being scared, like, the expectation of what is their expectation of what they think most homes are going to come with. Do they think it's going to be littered with problems? Are they surprised most of the time, or what's kind of their point of view after, while you're doing your inspection?
Yeah, I get both. I mean, I get those people that are just like, yeah, no, what big deal. Everything seems real minimal. Then I get the other ones that are so nervous, they're like waiting for me to be done so they can just be like, okay, what did you find? Like, is this house gonna fall down? And I'm like, I mean, the house has been standing for this long, and for a house to actually fall down, it would take quite a bit.
Quite a
But a lot of people they get nervous because they're buying something and they're like, okay, do I got to spend $30,000 on a roof and do that stuff? So
right, those big
when
ticket items.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I can tell them, "Hey, you have some stuff here and there," and then, like, sometimes that seems like a lot, and other ones are just like, that's okay, we're in an investment and make it work." But then you get those people that want, the house to be perfect, like as if it was
Mm.
brand new build, are they gonna fix that little hole in the wall and, little nail hole,
Right.
and it's like, well, that's cosmetic. It's not. I'm here for health and safety issues.
And I'm glad you're bringing this up because you just talked about, one of the common issues you find, kind of the buyer's views and their feeling. You know, what should buyers be concerned with? And I wrote this down. I have to read it verbatim or put it in kind of another way. How can buyers differentiate between the minor and major issues? Right, like you said, hey, there's little holes. Are they going to fix that? What do you see as a home inspector and with your knowledge? Hey, yeah, these are some issues, but they're minor. You
Yeah.
can get away with this, or no, this is something that needs to be fixed. And I worked with you plenty of times. I've looked at your home inspections, and I love how you organize everything. It's color coded. You have big safety issues. You've got major concerns. You've got some annotations of like, yeah, you may need a third party to come in. But what are some minor things that people maybe believe that it's bigger than what it's not supposed to be? You're like, that's really a minor issue. It's not a big issue. And then what are some really like really big issues? Like, hey, look, you need to have someone come in and check this out.
Yeah, I think for the big issues is like anything that's going to cause you damage, roof issues that cause leaks, plumbing issues that are leaking that are going to turn into bigger projects.
Okay.
I look at every house as that you can fix anything, there's
Right.
always something you can fix, but you just got to decide what's more important. The things that are going to cost you more down the road, that's more important to take care of.
Yeah.
Say you have something, a cosmetic, some caulking and stuff like that. Yeah, you got to get to it, but you don't have to do it right away. But
Okay.
you want to prevent maintenance. That would help. So,
So when you're seeing, and let's talk about roof leaks. I think, and I like to start from the kind of bottom down, right? And I think when even buyers, they kind of think the same way. The first thing they go from, what does my roof look like?
yeah.
So 5 shingles missing, is that a problem? If there's just missing shingles and there's no leaks, that's kind of like a minor issue, right? That's what I'm kind of trying to get to,
Yeah.
like, those type of things. Is that an issue if they just have some
So, I
shingles?
mean, that can be a bigger issue just because, if you're missing shingles, there is a paper membrane that's still protecting it. But, that's going to potentially lead to a roof leak.
Okay.
Um, those are kind of any kind of roof issues I would take care of right away just because that starts up at the top and then it's going to work its way down. You start getting wall damage, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, any dry rot issues because it just continues to grow.
Right.
Any
Okay.
moisture in the air is going to just make that growth go bigger. So those are
And
the
and, and I like you brought up dry rot because that's the most common thing I think a lot of buyers see, and usually it's on the eaves of right underneath the roof there. But talking about dry rot, how much dry rot do you typically see in a home? Because that's always seems to be popping up in home inspections. Do you typically see a lot? Is it common because we're in California, or what's your kind of point of view on that?
Yeah, I mean, I run into it a lot, especially door jams, especially the side garage door. No one, and you don't use it that often, you don't think about it, but the door jams, they're wood normally,
Okay.
and they're exposed to the weather all the time. And so if you're not keeping it painted, it's gonna get rotted out, and the water, doesn't dissipate from it. And a lot of times that side of the house where there's shade, and typically, so it doesn't have a chance to dry out. Same with the eaves, like your gutters back up, and it works its way back up to that wood members and then it doesn't have a chance to dry out, so it rots itself out.
Okay. Now we've been kind of talking about the structure of the house. Let's kind of talk about some like big mechanical issues. I know they think about the exterior and the interior, but a lot of buyers all of a sudden they forget about the HVAC.
Yeah.
They forget about the water heater. They forget about certain things like that. So kind of walk us through, what is a typical average age for a water heater and an HVAC, and when should buyers kind of be concerned to say, yeah, that's going to be an issue here pretty soon?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, HVAC is, I mean, it's a costly expense to fix, and they say anywhere from 20 to 25 years is where HVAC typically lasts. But I mean, I've seen some make it 6 years and then they have to be replaced. I've
Mm,
seen some go 30 plus years and before they have to be replaced. So, one, keep up on your maintenance,
okay.
have it serviced. Keep your filters clean. That's a big part of it. Keep your condenser outside. Keep the debris out of there and all that.
Talk on that condenser.
Yeah.
People get confused on that condenser part. Um, is that little pipe that runs right outside?
So no, the condenser is the big box that's outside the house. So that's normally it's on either the back of the house or the rear, on the side of the house there. And you have the big fan that spins on
Mm,
it, and that's what yeah, runs the freon through, and it cools the air down.
okay, okay. Let's move on because we could talk about this all day,
Yeah.
but I want to touch on one major thing. We've talked about the HVAC, we talked about the water heater, we talked about the eaves. Let's kind of go on the foundation because I know once that pops and whenever that pops up, that's a red flag for
Right.
everybody. What are you looking for when you're looking at the foundation of a property?
So foundation, we're looking for cracks. We're looking for anything. A big sign is inside the house. You can see cracking in the walls, and
Okay.
it's not so much the lines that go straight across or anything like that. It's kind of the ones that step crack. Those are the ones you want to worry about because that means that something's settling there.
Hmm.
When you have a slab, it's a little harder because you can't go underneath and see the foundation. So you're basically judging it on the perimeter and then the inside of the house. The walls and then feeling the flooring, how, if it's level. But on a raised foundation, you can go underneath the house. I can see movement, and there's been ones where a whole corner of the house has basically been dropped down, and
Mm.
they're trying to shim it and put wood in there to try to make up for it. And there's ways that they can be fixed, but yeah, that's foundation can be a pretty costly
And,
expense.
and you kind of rolled into my next question because you're like, they've tried to shimmy this. So, what are some of the craziest things or things that you've kind of like walked into that just surprised you? You're like, oh man, come on, man, someone's gonna catch this. So, what is the most wildest thing you've kind of walked into?
Yeah, I mean, I've ran into all kinds of things underneath the house. At one time, I ran into a skunk, so and
Did you get sprayed?
he almost got me, or she, whatever. I was looking into this hole and sprayed, and I ran, and
Oh, it
luckily
actually sprayed at you.
it sprayed, yeah, and luckily I didn't get sprayed, but the whole house outside. And then
Oh,
the owner was like, "Yeah, I've been smelling it lately." I'm like, "Been nice to know." But then I've also, seen where so I get to the house and the bathroom is completely torn apart. And I'm like, what's going on here? And they're like, oh, well, there was a sound or a leak in the drip. So I decided to pull the whole thing out. And it's like, oh, okay. And then now I'm trying to figure out what they've done, what they haven't. Um, I think one of the big things is the electrical. There's, even if you have a tenant in the house, I've seen it where tenants have done electrical things and added plugs and done stuff. Or, especially with the new electric cars, people are trying to add the 220 for the garage to power their vehicles. So, there's been modifications for electrical, especially older homes over the years, that changes. So it's a wide range of stuff I've seen, but yeah, it's
so
pretty
what I'm
cool.
hearing, the common issue is really self-induced.
Right.
It's mostly
A
people
lot of it
kind of
is, yeah.
are they're doing it to themselves. It's not something that you found, that was just kind of the built how it was built, but it's really just the owner doing some type of contraption to their house, some type
Oh,
of
yeah.
modification. You're just like, come on, man, like this is not gonna fly.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is keep up on your maintenance and just, a lot of times hire professionals to do it because that's what they're there for.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I've seen a couple things with that you've done when you very first started, and that seems to be common now. Technology has seemed to
Yeah.
kind of open a new gateway for home inspection. What are some of the new tools that you've acquired, over time that have now kind of elevated your way on how you're inspecting these homes?
Yeah, so when I opened my business, it was one thing that I was really focused on was trying to put technology towards it. I have drones so I can inspect the roof, especially on two-story roofs, because most home inspectors don't carry a ladder that can get up on a two-story roof.
Right.
Some tile roofs are lightweight, and then you don't want to really walk on them because you can break the tiles. I've used thermal camera, which a lot of home inspectors don't use, but I like to. You can see anomalies in the walls that you might not see, like stains that are starting to show up, leaks that come, insulation that has been not installed. stuff like that. I have sewer camera where you can scope the line to make sure that the lines are in good shape. And on those, it's typically anywhere like the house is 25 and older, you want to start looking at that. And if you have trees in your yard, those are kind of things.
And real quick, let me touch on that
Yeah,
that sewer lateral, right? You're talking about that pipe that runs from your house to the public sewage.
correct. Yeah.
And typically that pipe that we're speaking of, whose responsibility is that? Is that the homeowners or does the city take
So it
care of
is the
that?
homeowners to the city line. And then,
Okay.
so, anything that's on your front of your house, that's your property.
And
So,
you're just making sure. No, what happens? Because you mentioned trees, right? You've
yeah.
got trees in the front yard. The branches are growing. Is that common from them branches to kind of go into that sewer lateral pipe and clog it up?
Yeah, so I mean, trees need water just like all the other plants. And what happens is, especially in drought years, they start looking for water, and the pipes they start leaking a little bit, and then that's where they go for that water source, and they'll try to get in for that.
And how important is to have that sewer lateral clear? What happens if it's clogged up? Like, what are the consequences for someone that's not doing maintenance and all of a sudden they just forget about it or they don't view it? What is the major consequences if they don't address that?
Yeah, I mean, major consequence on Sunday afternoon, and your pipes back up, and you got to call a plumber to come out and pay high end dollar to get them to come clear your line because debris stuck in there, and then now you're trying to get those lines cleared.
Right.
So, I mean, the roots, what they do is they just get in that pipe there, and then the toilet paper gets stuck in there, and then now you create a blockage, and it backs all the way up into your toilets, your tubs. Those are the main areas that
So
back
this
up.
is a full blown backage.
Yeah,
Like if you don't clear that, this is not like, oh, I plugged the toilet or I plugged the sink and get a plunger. This is once that's plugged. I mean, we talk about maybe sometimes even digging the ground
right.
and fixing it. It's
Yeah,
that major of issue. Do you
yeah.
know on the top of your head what that cost could be on a range?
I mean, it varies because there's the ways that they can fix it from just putting a liner inside, but
Yeah.
then there's times where they're digging it up, and that could be thousands of dollars just to. I mean, you're paying someone to dig up a hole in your front yard.
Mm,
So
mm. And you mentioned this earlier because we talked about the piping, we talked about the electrical, we talked about the eaves. Someone that's already bought a house, they've talked, you already can, you've done the home inspection. What are some proactive tips that once they've purchased the home, they've moved forward? What are some of the maintenance tips that you think they should kind of continue to do to make sure that they're not running into some big future costs
yeah,
there?
I mean, water heaters. They say that you should flush them once a year.
Okay.
There's ways to do it. If you're not comfortable doing it, you can always have a plumber come out and flush the system. Your dryer vents, you don't think about it, but they fill up with lint. And what happens is that work makes dryer work harder, and then it builds up heat. So, you can have those lines cleared out. Fireplaces are kind of a thing of the past, but we still have some here in Sacramento. And, you want to make sure those are being cleaned regularly so that way you don't have soot building up in there and cause a fire. HVAC, you always want to change your filters. You want to get those serviced regularly. Keeping the gutters free of debris. Those are the kind of the big things. Keeping vegetation off the house.
Okay.
Keeping your house painted. Those are the big ones that you want to keep up on.
Awesome. And as homeowners, I know we're talking about proactive tips, and it seems like when I deal with first time home buyers, it's just kind of common thinking that once I've done my home inspection, I don't really have to do another one ever again. Is that the right way of thinking it? Should homeowners do a home inspection every year? Should they do it every 2 years? What do you think a homeowner should do once they've done that initial home inspection right after they buy? Should they, what's the common time they should
Yeah, I mean, it
reoccurring?
just depends on what you want. You can go back and do home inspections in the future, but I mean, ultimately, if you're keeping up on your maintenance, you know what's going on with your house better than
Yeah.
I am going to just going in there for a one-time inspection. But I mean, at the same time, you know that stuff's starting to get older, starting to wear. You want to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, then yeah, have an inspection come out. Maybe every 5 years or so. Because the other thing is, how often does people get on the roofs or go underneath their houses? This is where,
Like you said, never.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
And this is where, you would have someone go underneath it and just make sure everything's good shape.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to improve it.
Okay. Okay. And I'm a new homeowner myself. Recently, I moved not too long ago into new construction, and I think this is a big topic for a lot of people and representing first time home buyers for new construction as well. They have this kind of common thought that okay, it's a new build. Builders have done it. They've had the county or city come in and do their code inspection, so it should be fine. Is that the right way of thinking it, or should homeowners that are buying new construction, should they also get an addition home inspection, like a third party outside, like Ridgeline Inspection?
I mean, I recommend it. I know that the builders a lot of times are like, "Hey, we got it covered. We're getting you're good." But the thing is, I've come into a house where I've seen it where the tub there's a hole in it. No one caught it, because something was dropped and it was an accident happens. I've had it where they forgot to run electrical to the tankless water heater. I've had it where there's been a leak from the upstairs hall bathroom into the kitchen, and they wish they would have had a home inspection done because they didn't catch it until it was already damaged. A lot of times the builders, that first year that you own the house, they're going to cover anything that really happens. So, I mean,
Okay.
that is good. The other thing is at your 1 year mark, you get your home inspected,
Right.
just to make sure that everything's still in good working order. That way you can present it to the builder and say, hey, this is a few things that we got going on. Things are going to settle, things are going to shift.
Yeah.
And you're going to have a few things that show up.
Now, I'm not here to bag on builders because every builder is different,
Right.
right? You have different scales of different quality. Do you find that these new builds are of good quality? Do you find a lot of major issues? And again, we're not gonna say any names
Yeah,
on
yeah,
some type
yeah,
of
yeah.
builders because obviously no one's trying to get sued here.
You're right.
Do you find that? But do you find builders are doing a pretty good job?
I think overall, I mean, these houses are being built quick. That is a little
That is
concerning.
true.
You know, but I mean, overall, you think about it, and the new houses we have solar now, and the modern electrical and plumbing and everything like that. Yeah, I mean, there is things that are kind of being done fast, and you have multiple trades coming in and doing some stuff. So there's things that aren't the best, but I mean, at the end of the day, the new builds they're in a good home, and you just want to keep up on the maintenance of it, and they'll last.
So what I'm hearing is definitely get a home inspection.
Yeah.
If you're getting a new build, like I said, obviously I've seen great quality builds, I've seen lower quality builds,
Right.
and I'm always suggesting get a home inspection. I just did mine with you recently,
Yeah.
and there wasn't too many things I found, but there were some things that I really didn't even consider. I was like, oh yeah, it definitely needs that to be addressed. And like you said, I know the new home builds, that first year they kind of cover it, but they're only gonna cover it if you find it.
Right.
So it's better that you get your home inspection so you feel good inside. And you're like, yeah, okay, I did cover kind of all the bases.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So people out there, make sure you guys are covering your inspections out there. Get to Ridgeline and go through your new bill so that way he's on it correctly. And then couple more last questions, and then we're gonna be wrapping up this here pretty soon. How do you educate your clients during these inspections? Do you feel like they should be there? Do you think they should be there at the very end when you're done? Um, what is good for you? Like, do you like the buyers to be there? What's your point of view on that?
Yeah. So I mean, I don't mind if they're there during the inspection. I always go through with a walkthrough at the end and
Yeah,
show them everything that's going on. But a lot of times, people they've looked at the house one time, maybe two times, and they're buying this house and they're excited about it, but they haven't really dug in deep to like really think about it. So sometimes it's nice to have them there earlier so they can start, hey, did you see this? What's going on with this? I mean, it does slow me down, and it is, but at the same time, at the end, I'm going to do a full walkthrough with them,
yeah,
show them everything that's going on, kind of explain them. A lot of times I'll show them where the shutoffs are, especially in first time home buyers. They don't know how to turn off the water of the house, electric, So, just case of an emergency, like you got a leak, just go shut off the main, and then you
right.
deal with it after that,
Okay, okay.
but that's the thing is, having them there is important. I think when it's where they just look at the report and then don't actually get to have that conversation, sometimes they freak out. They get so worried, like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. And then once they call me and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about backing out of this deal. I'm like, this is actually not as big as you think. Um, and if they were there at the property, I can like kind of talk to them about it a little bit more about
Right.
it, so it's not so scary, and I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to tell them what they're trying to get themselves into.
No, right. And it kind of goes back to our kind of previous conversation on clarifying, right? Those minor issues versus
Yeah.
major issues. It's they in their mind they're like, oh, this is a major
Yeah.
issue, and they're gonna call you and say, hey, Ken, what is this? And then you kind of break it down and say, look, Not that big of an issue. It's an issue. Don't disregard it, but it's not as big as you think. It's not
Yeah.
some huge money factor that's going to be down the road. Minor, maybe it's a cosmetic issue.
Yeah.
What are the most common things that they're actually scared about though? Like, you know, is there any questions? They're like, hey, Ken, this is what I've heard from my mom and dad when they bought their house and my cousins. Is there something that's common to them that they believe that this house, before they even walk in, is going to have a problem with? Do anything that kind of come to mind?
I mean, I've heard all kinds of different stories. Someone's told me one time, like, "Oh, my mom had a problem with her plumbing," and it's like, okay, yeah, that can happen. They've had, oh, well, the roof was leaking and they didn't know for a long time, and then they had to spend all this money, or stucco was, they had stucco issues. Yeah, and then you always have those people that when they're buying a house, they're like, "Hey, make sure your home inspector looks at this." I
Yeah.
get that all the time.
Okay. Yeah.
And then a lot of times, not to try to be mean or anything, but like the dads come in and be like, "Oh, I know what's
Right.
going on here," and
Never held a hammer in their life.
right, but they've owned the house for
Right,
30
right.
years, so they know, and they do know a lot. But at the same time, it's like some of the stuff they're looking at, I'm like, yeah, it's not as big a deal as I think it
Yeah.
is. But yeah, you know, um, yeah, it's funny what everybody thinks is more important than and there's always gonna be people that tell you, "Hey, look for this, look for that,"
Right.
and it's just different because it bases on the age of the house, type of plumbing, electrical. There's all kinds of things that can change for it.
You know, we've talked about a lot of things, a lot of different things. And one thing that actually just popped in my mind, it wasn't on a question here, but I realized when I walk through, this is something that always catches them. And I was like, hey, we're talking to the inspector, that settlement cracks,
Yeah,
right? You walk in, and even in new builds, right? I'm coming up on 1 year mark now, and I've got like 6 or 7 fractures,
yeah,
in certain spots. I know because I've been in the industry for a long time, that's not that big of a deal. But kind of explain to the audience here on difference between settlement cracks and maybe where you see a crack, like, yeah, that is potentially could be a foundation issue.
yeah, and that's where the sheetrock, a lot of times where they meet, because they're 4x8 sheets of sheetrock, and they put them together, and there's a joint there. And a lot of times, doors closing, vibration around the house can cause those to start showing up, especially on corners, especially garage doors, because they have the auto closing doors on them. So that causes vibration in the wall, and it makes these little cracks in the walls. Those are all cosmetic issues. Like I said earlier, when it goes to like a step cracking where it's kind of going up the wall, those are the ones you want to worry about, because those are
Okay.
the ones where, and then you're going to start feeling settlement in the floor where it's leaning on one side, or,
So if someone's seeing a crack from the bottom of a baseboard and it kind of runs all the way up into kind of the ceiling, like
yeah,
that long of a crack,
yeah.
is that something that, like,
I mean, if it's a straight line, typically, it's probably a seam from where the sheetrock is. So
okay.
that's what you're kind of looking at. Like the corners of the door jams and stuff like that, when it starts going at an angle, those are
Mhm.
the ones that you kind of want to look for more.
Okay, okay, get to know on that one. And man, we talked about so many things. I want to kind of just address, if you can kind of give the audience when they're going to come and use your company, what can they expect? Like, um, post talk on the conversation. Like, what are they getting? Are they getting a 20 pieces of paper? Are they getting it electronically? And kind of walk us through like how you want them to kind of view your inspection as they're reading it.
Yeah, so what happens is I do it all electronically. You get an email, and and it goes onto a portal where you can actually pull up the report. You can print it up into a PDF file and print it out, and it ranges anywhere from 40 to 100 pages depending on what we find in the house.
Right.
So and then, like you said, I color code everything. So kind of the red is kind of the major items that I would really be focused on, the more health and safety issues. Orange is kind of the, hey, I recommend doing this, you kind of keep up on that. And then you have the blue, which is kind of the maintenance items or just more informative stuff. But you just want to look through your reports, and no matter who you use for your home inspection, just look for the big ticket items, focus on those. And then when you move into a house, put yourself a list together and put the more important stuff up at the top and work your way down,
Okay.
and just work on your, the stuff that's on your list.
Awesome. And last question here, and then after this question, I just kind of want to go a summary conversation on kind of what we talked about, what things buyers should go through. But last question for our audience out there: most valuable piece of advice you can give the first time home buyer.
Um, the biggest thing is just keeping up on the maintenance. That is one thing that I think where most houses get to be having the most problems is when they just don't maintain their house.
Right.
Making sure you look underneath your sinks, regularly, because there could be a leak down there that you don't think about because you don't open up the cabinets that often. It's just one of those things where, just like a car, you want to maintain it. You do oil changes, you do that. The house is the same way. It needs to be taken care of, and that's the biggest thing.
Do you give them any kind of post resources? Is there kind of like some follow-ups that you kind of give them or that they can reach out to even, down the line to ask questions? Is there a way that you stay kind of connected with these buyers to make sure that they're staying up on that? Because I get emails from you
Yeah.
about, hey, man, you might want to check this here or check that there. Make sure you're on that.
Yeah, so I have certain programs there that have one's called a recall check. So if there's any recalls on any of your appliances or anything like that, it
Uh,
tells you that, yeah, hey, these are you have a recall on it, and they'll give you information on how to contact those, the builder or the manufacturer to deal with that. The other thing is yeah, it just sends out emails saying, hey, this time of the year you should be, keeping up on this. There's different stuff like that. In the report, I kind of break it down of certain things that you should do yearly, annually, 90 days, stuff like that. And then I always tell people, call me. I have no problem answering questions for you. I just actually last week I had a client call me from an inspection I did a year ago. They're like, hey, we're just noticing this. Is this something I should be taking care of? I was like, yeah, you should be. And it's just like simple roof stuff. It was just cleaning out the valleys in the roof, and it was just they just weren't sure, and so.
and that's why I always use you. I've used
Yeah.
you for, Ken, like how long have
It's been like 4 or 5 years now.
four or
Yeah.
5 years, yeah, 4 or 5 years, and I've never used anybody else other than you in this area, because I love how you operate. I love how you're accessible as best as you can be when you're not in the field.
Yeah.
I love your response time. But to kind of summarize this conversation we had today, and correct me if I'm wrong or I'm saying something that's not correct, but I truly believe that if you're going to look for a home inspector, have some background knowledge, not just, hey, I just went to go take a test and now I'm certified, right? Not to say necessarily you should be an architect, but
Right.
is that a plus? I think so. To have some construction background, is that a necessity? I think so. I think to have that knowledge, have a company that obviously is going to be there for their clients. They're organized. They're have the ability to talk to the buyer, calm them down. Is there anything else that you see like a home inspection company should have? That way they have that real value to that customer. Anything I'm missing on there?
I mean, just, one thing is, a lot of agents they have their home inspectors they use, but the thing is look at what the reviews are online. Google, you can go on there and Google most companies. You can see what the reviews are. The other thing is look at the technology they're using. Are they still doing everything on a piece of paper? I mean, now I'm taking an iPad there and I can show them pictures, so they're not waiting for the report. So when I'm doing the walkthroughs, they're seeing it right there on the spot, and I can talk to them about it. You know, just make sure that what they're covering. Make sure that they're saying, we're going to look at this building. We're going to look at if there's something on the property. Are we looking at that or not?
Right.
And just make sure that they're very thorough, and you don't want the guy that's going to come in there 30 minutes and be gone.
Right, exactly. It's like
you-
that was too quick, and
yeah,
then all of a sudden you don't know what they found.
yeah,
So, man, look, I appreciate your time,
yeah.
Ken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Real quick for our audience out there, this is Nick Orlando with the Nick Alonzo Group, and again, I'm here with my great friend Ken at Ridgeline Inspections. And again, guys, if you're looking to purchase a home, first-time home buyer, seasoned home buyer, but you need a person that you can count on for a home inspection, Isaiah, if you can get the camera over here to Ken over here, Ridgeline Inspections, my good buddy Ken, and we'll go ahead and put his information at the end of this podcast to reach out, and you guys can ask as many questions as you guys need to. So I appreciate the audience out there, and thank you for showing up.